it helps. I would prefer to be on a team that we're driving in our lanes, but we're feeding one another the information that makes the whole thing work better.
I think it touches on kind of what we talked about earlier about music. You're so good that you can incorporate someone else's playing style into the tune you're playing.
Well, everybody, welcome back to Design to Help Your Business Grow. I am your host, Randy Lynn Johnson, here as always with our fabulous owner and design principal, Robin Pasley.
Hello.
And today we have a very exciting guest, Vince Varuni. Vince, your name makes me want to revert back to my days as a broadcast anchor and really not like Vince Varuni. Anyway, so just a reminder about the point of this podcast. It is to help business owners grow their business. And so we have the design and branding piece covered from this firm, but we always like to interview other professionals in the city and see what you have to offer business owners. And so you are an attorney.
Yes.
Specifically a tax attorney.
That's right.
With Harbor Point Associates.
Right.
Is that right? Okay.
Right.
What is the problem? How do you help business owners? What do you solve for them?
I think there's no one answer I can provide there.
Okay.
It really depends on what the client's immediate problem is and what the ultimate goal is. My multidisciplinary background, if I can use a $6 word,
Nice.
is in tax matters and how to mitigate the tax impact, whether that's prospectively
Okay.
for a business owner looking to grow or in any sort of succession planning, or retroactively if they have tax problems and they want to get out of that mess so that
Okay.
they could continue growing. And I also assist in situations where it's a close call between criminal and civil investigations, so trying to keep people towards the civil side and away from criminal investigations with federal and state tax agencies. So it really depends where the client wants me.
Sure.
And I usually ask for just an extra seat at the table. And if there's something I can see or value I can provide, I'll comment. And if not, I can provide somebody who will be able to meet the business owner's needs.
Yeah, that's great.
I know that you have been in this business for quite some time, but you just transitioned into the Springs.
We moved from Maryland, and I was back and forthing it for a little while. With being on both coasts and in transient cities, you get to see a lot of different types of problems. And so one of the things I'm looking out for here are, okay, well, what does the local market here need? And to assess the local market's needs and see how I could position myself to be valuable for the local community.
What is one of the things that you see kind of come up more often than not across the board here?
So far, I think it's when dealing with federal tax issues, you're dealing with basically similar questions. I'm running a business. What can I do to mitigate some of the tax impact? Am I structured properly as a business? That seems to come up everywhere. I think there's varying levels of advice people get depending on who they work with. And navigating through those conversations with their existing advisor is sometimes the challenge that I look forward to, because you want to keep the client's team intact while trying to be the new guy on the team.
Sure.
And, well, we've done it this way.
So I find that to be something else that we kind of share when we come to the table with our client and all the other advisors they have with them, finding our seat and then knowing how to best help the client, because they're our focus. We have to play well in the sandbox, so to speak, with the other team, but without, like you said, unseating anyone, but being able to assess what's going on and bring the right kind of advice to them that may even sometimes be contradictory to what they've been receiving.
Correct.
Which is really difficult sometimes. I can see that's part of what you do too, is bringing that kind of fine-tuned perspective for the tax situation.
Yeah, and I think it changes. You're absolutely right, case by case. So sometimes they're sitting on resources that may not be immediately apparent to the business owner, and even guiding them to ask those questions to their existing advisors. And when the client or a prospect tells you about their existing relationships, you'll know it's safe enough for the client to reach out to them.
I love that collaborative mindset that you have, because I find it to be what I share with some of my favorite colleagues is when they want to collaborate too. Too many times I find that the modality is to silo up so that we can protect ourselves, I'm going to know what I know over here. But I would prefer to work with people in this way that you're describing, where you assess what's happening and then you go, okay, I think he knows more on this. Call me back if you need help on this other thing, because I think it's the best for the client ultimately, but it helps. I would prefer to be on a team that we're driving in our lanes, but we're, helping one another, feeding one another the information that makes the whole thing work better.
I think it touches on kind of what we talked about earlier about music. Because if you're so good that you can incorporate someone else's playing style into the tune you're playing, versus, and this goes back to the jazz versus classical mindset, that there are performers out there. I don't claim to be an expert performer at all, but just the theory is you have expert performers out there who can play with anybody, and they'll make hits. They'll make phenomenal music live, impromptu. And one of the things I strive to be is so good at what I do that part of my personal challenge is to work with anybody and that the client's working with, and how to incorporate that style into the service that you're offering the client. Part of the transition I was talking about earlier was to shift from a classical mindset to more of a jazz mindset, and to be very open even with the client that this is a tentative thought process, this is a tentative position, it's subject to review, and we're going to have discussions with your other team members, and if there's a better way, we're going to find it.
So you said that you are a classically trained musician. What did you play, or do you play?
I was raised on the piano.
Okay.
Then I shifted my attention a little bit and explored violin and then guitar. But then I started to transition into other instruments as well, percussion, really.
Sure. Leave some for the rest of us.
Yeah,
Get grief.
No. And then, I don't play as often as I'd like to nowadays, but it's something that impacted me growing up.
That's really cool. And it's cool that you've taken your experience and what was relevant to you, and you apply it to your work. And I think that's a very unique, special skill set that you have, I know Robin has, and it's fun to see when that plays out.
But Robin, do you find outside artistic talents that get incorporated into the business dynamics with a client or with a team?
100%. Matter of fact, in my previous career in music, the collaboration piece was huge for us. We'd started out as, a duo, writing our own music, playing our own music, and then we folded the next large piece of our career into collaboration efforts. And so all the albums we produced after that were collaborations. And what I learned in that process was having to give up your ego in order to make the better song. And I think that's the same way in creating projects with our clients, is giving up the ego of, I want to do this one thing. You have to lay that down so that you can go, what do you need? What is your heart? What is going to make this project talk about you and not about me? And so I'm able to bring, I think, what is a more mature artist's viewpoint to design that can bring that creativity, but really submits it to the will and the professional future of the business I'm working in.
Because ultimately the successful client or the happy client is going to be the ultimate success story for you as an advisor in your space.
Absolutely. Right? Plus, it's why I get out of bed in the morning, is helping them. That's my favorite stories to tell. We create these books at the end of our projects that we share with our clients that show the project we did together before and after. And that stack of books, some days when I'm having a hard time, I just sit down and look at it because I think, that's a stack of happy people. I got to help all of them. Right. And it's why we do what we do.
So, Vince, who do you love to work with? How would you describe your ideal client?
I think here's what it ends up being most of the time. They're large transactions dealing with a complex area of substantive law with unique personalities, oftentimes in conflict with one another. That to me is my ideal. So I have a transactional and litigation hybrid practice. Where I find myself thriving the most is where transaction and litigation typically meet.
So I'm hearing you are not afraid of a challenge. Like, you seem like you like a challenge. You're a good problem solver. And so
That's it, basically it. Like you mentioned,
Yeah.
getting up in the mornings. To me, that's when I know I've solved a challenge like that for a client and they're better off today than they were, before they met me. That to me gives me value.
That's awesome. Is there anything federally or from the state level kind of coming down the pipeline that business owners should be aware of? Anything tax or what that they need to make sure they have?
Absolutely. The one thing I think I can say, all business owners should keep their ears to the ground at this moment, because there are so many changes coming our way that we don't necessarily know of. There are lots of options presented at the congressional level, tax-wise, that will be subject to change as this one big beautiful bill that we keep talking about makes its way through the different chambers. So things will be changing. I would say for all business owners to get their advisors, whoever that may be, their CPAs, their financial advisors or bankers, whoever they work with, and to just really keep their ears to the ground at this point, because everything is subject to change.
We already have your contact information, but if our listeners are looking for help, a master problem solver, how can they find you?
They can call our main line, which is operating 24/7, 866-405-1615. And they can also find all of this contact information at harborpointassociates.com.
Well, Vince, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. And just honestly, finding a lawyer, I would just call it, like, you just have such a calming
I know. I was thinking the
level
same
head.
thing.
I was like, wow. Awesome. We need more people like you in this world.
Seriously.
But thanks so much, and we'll see you around the city.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
In an increasingly competitive market, the merits of using interior design as a strategic growth tool can make all the difference in not just surviving, but thriving.
Hasley Commercial Interiors, designed to help your business grow.